These are all the crazy and mind-blowing conspiracy theories Joe Rogan covered in his podcast, Explained. The Moon Landing Hoax. The Moon Landing Hoax theory suggests that the 1969 Apollo 11 mission, where astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were said to have walked on the moon, was actually faked by NASA. Some believe that the U.S. government staged it in a film studio to win the space race against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. People point to things like the way shadows fall in photos or the lack of stars in the backgrounds as proof that the whole thing was staged.
The moon landing, you're not a... You believe in the moon landing, right?
I used to believe in the moon landing.
You don't anymore?
I had a joke in my act about it, that before COVID, I would have told you vaccines the most important invention in human history, and after COVID, I'm like, I don't think we went to the moon.
Yeah, I know that was in your... But
Yeah.
you actually think that?
I think there is a less than zero possibility that we did not go to the moon.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. Why do you think we went to the moon?
Because it's exactly what you just said about... Well, there's a lot of reasons, but the main thing is what you just said about the Earth. The vastness of the conspiracy that would be required to fake that, it's so vast that it's a lot more incredible to believe that we faked it than to believe that we just went. And going to the moon, it's a massive achievement, but I think the greatest human achievement of all time. But even so, to fake it would be even more massive, because not only would you need all of these space agencies and all the different whatever people in American institutions to be colluding, but you'd also need foreign governments, including adversarial foreign governments, who at this point certainly would know we faked it, and for some reason haven't blown the lid on it. So they're letting us like take this achievement that they know. Like, why haven't the Russians come out and said
all those things you're saying are true?
Right.
I don't argue with any of the things you're saying. But one of the things that I think you have to consider was, if it's not possible for human beings to safely go through the Van Allen radiation belts and out into deep space without much protection and face the temperatures that are on the surface of the moon, which get up to 250 degrees and 250 degrees below zero in the shadows. There's no environment there. It's hostile beyond belief. Micrometeorites are flying into the moon all the time. They're flying through space all the time. We've never had a single biological organism go out into deep space, past the Van Allen radiation belts, and then come back to Earth and come back alive, except human beings during the Apollo missions. Every single space station mission, every single space shuttle mission, all of them are inside 350 miles from the Earth's surface. The only time human beings have ever been past that and through the Van Allen radiation belts was the Apollo missions. And we were the only humans that were ever able to do that. The Russians never figured out how to do it. No one else figured out how to do it but the Apollo astronauts. And we did it 7 times, 6 successfully, from 1969 to 1972. If you said to me, do you think that they could fake the moon landing today? I would say no. I would say no. People are going to be able to track it. It's very easy. They have satellites. They're going to know everything. But in 1969, the technology was so crude that when they first showed the Apollo 11 landing, they didn't even show a direct feed to the networks. So like if you're on CBS News, you don't get a direct feed. What you do is you point a camera at a projection screen. So that's why the film looks so shitty. The camera is pointed to a projection screen where you see the astronauts jumping around on the moon. And you see this weird, grainy, third-generation image, right? And we did it, and we have never done it since. And we've always said we're going to do it, and no one's ever even come close. No one's ever even gone into deep space since 1972.
We also haven't been trying.
We haven't been trying. But we always talk about going back, including Herbert Walker Bush talked about going back, George W. talked about going back. They all talk about going back, but nobody ever gets anywhere.
Well, I think that's because we lost the spirit and hunger for discovery. We
didn't just lose that. We lost all the technology from the Saturn V rocket. They don't even have that anymore. In fact, they don't even have the original film. They erased all the original footage of the Apollo missions. So you just have copies of everything.
You could develop the technology again. You can do all that.
Sure you could. If you can get through the Van Allen radiation belts into deep space with human beings and have them safely come back.
But I think what you're describing to me, all that does is highlight how incredible the achievement was.
If they did it. Right, if they did it.
But I don't. Well, here's the main point. There's no evidence, because saying that it was a hoax, is an assertion of a. It's not. You're not just denying an event. You're asserting a whole other event that you say happened instead. And there is evidence that we went to the moon. Now, someone who's a skeptic might say it's not enough evidence or it's not good evidence. There's like evidence. There's eyewitness. There's people that went and came back and told us. There's footage. There's a lot. Okay. There is evidence.
Okay.
But there's no evidence of the hoax. Like no one has come and said, "Here's my affirmative evidence that this hoax happened." It's never happened, right, as far as I'm aware. No one's ever provided that evidence.
I see what you're trying to say. The evidence that they went to the moon, there's a bunch, right? There's moon rocks. That's one. There's lunar reflectors that they placed on the moon. That's another. And there's a couple problems with those. First of all, the Soviets put laser reflectors on the moon as well. And also the moon itself, in many places where you shine lasers on it, it bounces back by itself. The reflective quality of the moon, the reason why the moon is so bright and white in the sky when the sun hits it, there's a certain amount of, you get a certain amount of bounce back off of different things with lasers. There's some photographs that are interesting. What was it? Was the India? What was the one where they got the most high resolution photos of the lander?
I'm looking at Wikipedia right now of all third-party evidence of the Apollo mission.
One of the things that's interesting is they gave a moon rock to, was it a prime minister of Holland? Is that what it was? Which one was the moon rock they gave that turned out to be petrified wood? So the Apollo astronauts gave a moon rock to some foreign dignitary, and it turned out to be a piece of petrified wood. They do have samples of moon rocks that came from the moon, but we also have those on Earth. And in fact, Wernher von Braun in 1968, I believe, went to Antarctica. There's all these photographs of him in Antarctica. Antarctica is a great place to take moon rocks because Antarctica is just this gigantic sheet of white, and you can spot the meteorites in the ground. Listen, I'm not saying we didn't go to the moon. What I'm saying is the subject is complex, and it's not even a little complex. It's really complex. There's a documentary called The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. This guy, Bart Sibrel, he's been obsessed. He was a guest on the show, too. Been obsessed about this his whole life and absolutely believes that we never went to the moon. And there's enough shit that you go, okay, if he's right about any of these things, it's weird. One of the things was some of the photographs of the moon, they ran through one of those AI detectors that can tell you whether or not something's false or artificially generated. And it showed different images from, I think it was a Chinese satellite of the moon. They said this is legitimate. But then it got to these Apollo images, and they said these have been doctored. This AI decided. This AI program that they ran.
All the images or a few of them?
A few of them.
But then other ones were found to be authentic.
I don't think so. I think they only ran a few images through. See if you can find those, Jamie. Find what they did. Again, this is not saying that we didn't go to the moon. It could be, and this was a fact with the Gemini 15 program, or Michael Collins. There was a photograph of Michael Collins that they took in one of his training exercises, where he had those packs that they put on where they can move around while they're doing moon walks, or not moon walks, space walks outside of where they're connected by a tether. And he was like in this harness and manipulating this device. And what they had done is taken a photograph of him training, and then someone, probably some overzealous PR person, had taken that photograph and then blacked out the background and tried to pass it off as a really clear photograph of him out there on a spacewalk, which is probably very difficult to get, right? You'd have to have another person at the camera, frame it right. They had this photo. They're like, look, he did it. Let's just pass this off as the real thing, which is, you're also talking about the Nixon administration, where they were just full of shit constantly.
If you remember, this is where he tried to claim it was from, which is a Russian video. I don't know.
So there's different video where they ran it through, and they said it was real, and was it the Chinese program? But when they ran the American ones, the American images, they said that they were doctored. Again, it doesn't mean that we didn't go to the moon. But it does mean, okay, there's that. That's weird. Have you ever seen the Apollo 11 post-flight press conference?
Yeah.
It looks like a hostage video. It looks like a bunch of guys who don't want to be there. They look real fucking nervous, and they look real deceptive. And if you watch that video, it's weird.
Well, but I think that's the temperament it requires to do something like that.
Could be.
It's almost suicidal to go to the moon. And so you have to be like barely even a human psychologically to do it. So that to me is just like, and they just went through this whole experience, but who knows what that does to the human psyche. To even just like be in the vastness of space, even on the space station, I feel like that would change me as a person, not necessarily for the best.
But there's actually like a psychological condition that
Bigfoot is real. Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch, is a legendary creature that people believe lives in remote forests, particularly in North America. Described as a huge ape-like figure covered in fur, sightings of Bigfoot date back to the 1800s. And it became widely known in the 1950s and 60s. While no one has found concrete proof, many people still claim to have seen it or found footprints, and some even think there's a conspiracy to hide its existence.
Yeah, didn't you say that about
hunters
Bigfoot?
don't see it. That's why I don't believe in it.
Some hunters do.
No, not many.
People that see it are usually loggers, hunters, natives, people that are out in the woods.
There's another problem. Another problem is dusk. You see things at dusk or at dawn. It's very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Bears walk on two legs all the time. I have personally watched bears walk on two legs, and if I didn't know any better, and if it was a dark environment, like it was dusk, you barely can see, I would think it's Bigfoot.
Right.
Yeah. But I do think Bigfoot existed.
Yeah.
There's some insane number of Native American words for Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah.
Sasquatch is just one of them. There's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of Native American words for this one animal that's fake, but all the other words they have are for real animals. They don't have a bunch of dragons. They don't have like mythical creatures in Native American mythology, but they do have this one giant man thing that definitely existed.
At some point.
At 100%, Gigantopithecus was a real animal. It was 8 to 10 feet tall, bipedal hominid.
Yep.
It was a huge gorilla-looking primate that died off somewhere around 100,000 years ago, but they don't know really for sure.
100,000?
Yeah, but they don't know for sure. The thing about it is it's like if you only find fossils from 100,000 years ago, you could assume that that this animal at least lived then. But you don't know when it went extinct.
Right.
You might find some new fossil like 10 years from now. They might find some new site. And wait a minute, these are 20,000 years old, or these are 30,000 years old, or these are 50,000 years old. But either way, anatomically identical human beings have been around for 500,000 plus years, maybe even more. So, or similar human beings. So then we definitely interacted with them.
Yeah.
Or they were around when we were around.
I think they're still around. I think there's hundreds, maybe thousands of them. That's what I believe. I think they're in caves or something. Or maybe it's...
You know what the problem with that is?
What?
They're too big. The amount of food that they would need to eat,
Yeah.
you'd have to be grazing all day long. See, if you're Bigfoot,
Posted in the Journal of Zoology this month.
if it's there, could it be a bear?
They're saying it's black bear, American black bear.
Yeah, American black bear that stands up.
But even
Yeah,
little
that's what I'm
kids
saying.
Yeah.
would know the difference between a monkey and a bear.
No. First of all, let me tell you something. If you're in the woods and you're in a heightened state because you're looking around, you don't know what's out there. It's all thick woods. It's weird. Woods are weird.
Yeah.
And you see something, you could trick your brain. I saw a squirrel, and for like 2 or 3 seconds, I thought it was a wolf.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
like,
That's
"Is that a
real.
wolf?"
That's real
It's like,
between here.
I'm seeing something moving in between thick trees, and I see gray fur. I'm like, oh my God, is that a wolf?
Yeah.
Because there's wolves out there.
Right.
I'm in Canada. I'm like, oh no, it's a fucking squirrel. What the fuck is wrong with me? What the fuck is wrong with me?
Shoot it.
Yeah. It's like people see what they want to see.
Yeah.
And the problem is you get something into someone's head, a mythological thing, whether it's a UFO or whether it's Bigfoot. I think the world is way more slippery than we like to think. And I think there's states of consciousness that people can achieve during high anxiety levels, definitely during the use of psychedelic drugs.
Yes.
Sometimes during weird states in their life, like near-death experiences, loss of a loved one, extreme emotion, a lot going on, a lot of anxiety and fear, like you would have if you're in the woods.
Sure.
And then
You're on edge.
you see a light across the sky. It might have been just a meteorite.
Right.
But you're in the wrong headspace to
Yeah.
see that meteorite. And you just freak.
Yeah.
And maybe for a brief moment, you can see something that's been there all along.
You know how defeated I am right now. I just want you to tell
Bigfoot?
me, like, dude, there's some
I wanna
crazy,
believe in Bigfoot.
crazy stuff out there.
I've interviewed a lot of Bigfoot people.
Yeah.
I had one joke I used to do about Bigfoot. Here's what you don't find when you go looking for Bigfoot. You view things anymore. You're boxed in. It's very dangerous to be committed to something you know is not true.
It also
because
shows
it
a level of
boxes you in.
intelligence too, because when you got these geniuses who spent
Yeah.
their entire lives doing this stuff in astrophysics, you're telling me that they're part of this scheme too, and they believe that it's
This is
flat?
100% of the problem. 100%. It's adopting an idea too soon. That's 100% of the idea. Because once you adopt that idea and then you hang on to it, now you're fucked. Like Bigfoot, man. Bigfoot was a big one for me. I was convinced that
Really?
Bigfoot was real.
What's wrong with you? How long
Stupid.
ago was this?
A couple weeks
Not
ago.
when not when I'd known you.
Yeah, man. When I did this TV show, that's when I totally let it go. I'd kind of let it go before then, but Duncan and I actually went to the Pacific Northwest, and we went to hang out with like real Bigfoot experts that were searching for Bigfoot all the time.
When you say real Bigfoot experts, you mean con artists
No, it's not that.
Dumbasses.
The way I described them was unfuckable white dudes.
who have nothing to do.
They're just a bunch of fellows. We decided to call ourselves a rap band. We're gonna call ourselves UFWD,
Fuck's sakes.
unfuckable white dudes.
And you didn't find anything.
out there in the Pacific
You didn't find
Northwest.
shit.
We found camp spots, a lot of spent shells and beer cans laying around.
You're better. You're better than that, Joe.
No, this is what I found out. People want to believe in things. And once you want to believe in something, instead of looking at it objectively and going, well, I'm not sure, you like automatically go towards any information that would point to the fact that the thing is real, not to the whole body of information. Look, well, how crazy are these people? When you meet the people that believe in Bigfoot, the ones that have seen it, the ones that have claimed to have seen it, almost all of them were clearly lying.
And a little like out of it. Little,
There was one
on the
lady.
spectrum.
Maybe, yeah, but just some people are just liars. They can't help it. They make stories up to make themselves feel better. Like they just crazy, and you can't really say it to their face because you don't really know. But sometimes it just gets ridiculous. And this one lady was one of the only ones that didn't seem like that. This one lady was telling me a story about how she was going through the woods, and she saw some big thing that was standing up, and it was like 7 feet tall, and it was moving through the woods. And she saw this thing, and she was like, oh my God, it's an ape. And then she realized it was Bigfoot. And she saw it for a few steps, and then it was gone. At the time, I was fascinated. At the time, I was like, maybe she really did see it. But now I know for a fact, an absolute fact, that where she lived, there's a lot of black bears. And black bears will often walk on their hind legs. They'll walk like Bigfoot. They really do. There's many, 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 many videos. I've seen it with my own two eyes. I saw a bear walk for several steps, like 6, 7, maybe even 10 steps
On its hind legs.
roaring at another bear, and they were going to fight with each other, and they fought with each other standing up. They went after each other.
Dope.
But dude, he walked towards him like that. Look at that.
That does look like Bigfoot.
Look at that. See that bear? This is a bear that had injured paws. And sometimes they'll get their paw bit off in a fight.
God damn.
They duke it out with each other, or maybe they get caught in a trap. You know, some fucking assholes that set traps out there
So
for
they're
them
forced
too.
to walk like that.
They bite their own foot off to get out of a trap.
Damn, man.
That's real, man. They get wolves that way. They catch them in traps.
Jesus.
Traps are scary shit,
Hell
man.
yeah.
But these animals, you know, when they get a hurt paw, they'll walk on their back legs like Bigfoot. So she probably saw some shit moving through the woods. Like,
Holy
look at these.
shit.
Yeah. Dude, they just stand there.
That's terrifying.
I know. And they can walk like that.
That's terrifying, but it's clearly not a fucking Bigfoot,
Right.
you morons.
No. See, you say that, but dude, I'm telling you, when you're in the Pacific Northwest, you cannot see 15 yards in front of you. Duncan and I were talking about it. Because, you know, we had to hang out up there and go wandering through the woods. We're like, if there was something right there, like 5 trees away, and then it moved into the back, how long would it take before it disappeared?
DMT and Aliens. DMT is a super strong drug that makes people see crazy visions and feel like they're in another world. Many who take it say they meet strange beings that look like aliens or travel to different dimensions. Some people believe these experiences are more than just hallucinations, that DMT might actually let people connect with real aliens or hidden parts of the universe.
Hard because it's so fun to go with the crazy story.
Yeah.
Like the alien story is so compelling. It's so fun.
Very compelling story.
I mean, if we found some sort of evidence of aliens, it would be so utterly spectacular. Even if it was a simple alien. Like I've always said this, that if we found like a jellyfish on the moon, we would freak out. But, you know, there's really complex, bizarre things at the bottom of our ocean that we've never discovered. Just they're just not in the correct location for us to be excited.
And then the other issue, we're getting slightly off our flood topic here.
That's
but
okay.
But the other issue of entities, the encounters with entities, anybody who's smoked DMT will know that, as I have, as you have, that will know that you do encounter entities in the DMT state, and they do communicate with us. And there's a lot of parallels with the ETs, or the aliens as they're described in modern UFO abduction accounts. And Rick Strassman, have you ever had him on your show?
You know, Rick got sick. He was supposed to be here a couple of times. We're trying to reschedule it now.
Yeah.
But he had some pretty serious health issues.
I know.
And we had a date scheduled out. But I love that guy. I've had a chance to sit down with him a couple of times and talk to him.
And of course, you presented DMT, the spirit molecule.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And he's so important to me because I remember when I did it, I was so confused. I mean, to me, it was like my first DMT experience changed everything I thought about the world.
Yeah.
And I immediately didn't give a shit about aliens anymore.
Right.
Like it was almost instantaneous. Like before then, I was like, Roswell, they got the ship, man.
Yeah.
It's in a hangar. But what I encountered doing DMT was so spectacularly alien that the pedestrian concept of something that looks like a person but has a bigger head and large eyes.
And higher tech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was weird and cool as it would be if it was real. It was nothing. I mean, literally not 1/1,000,000th as interesting as what you absolutely can encounter when you do DMT.
Yeah,
that's the aliens.
That's the aliens, an utterly alien realm filled with alien intelligences who communicate. And of course, again, the skeptics say, oh, it's all just made up in your brain. But we don't know that. And Rick is open to the possibility that we are dealing with areas of reality that are not normally accessible to our senses, and that become accessible to our senses by retuning the receiver wavelength of the brain, which is what he suggests DMT does. And I think that's very plausible. And at the very least, those who are interested in UFOs and aliens should be also investigating this line of inquiry. Can we use changes in consciousness to understand the majestic complexity of the universe in which we live? And I think the answer is definitely yes. And many of Rick's volunteers, I paraphrase, but they came back with reports that the entities who'd encountered them said, "We are so glad you've discovered this technology. Now we can communicate with you much more easily." You know, it's fascinating. So there's a technology for encountering other intelligences. And against that, this mechanistic, simplistic alien meme that's going around now that they're a bit like us, but they came here in higher tech, it's dull by comparison with that.
It is dull by comparison. If you're interested in anybody, the book is amazing. It's called DMT, the Spirit Molecule. And he has a new book that he's putting out about
DMT and the Spirit and the Soul of Prophecy.
Yeah. And he's just a really, really interesting guy. But his experiments that he did were the first, I think, in many, many decades to get approved by the government.
Correct.
So he did everything above ground. I mean, he was above board. He did,
and because it was government approved, his remit was that he had to find some therapeutic benefit for DMT, and he couldn't actually. But that's not the point.
Yeah.
I'm sure actually there are therapeutic benefits, but that's not the point. The point is here is a tool for investigating the mystery of consciousness and the mysterious nature of reality. And I mean, fuck me, if we get 5 or 6 volunteers who haven't compared notes, all coming back who've met entities who said, "We're so happy you found this technology."
Yeah.
It's hard to explain that as just to reduce it to brain activity.
Not only that, when we talk about things that are so big and are ignored by mainstream culture, this is one that's just like that. You're talking about an endogenous human chemical that not only is in us, but is in thousands of different plants. Like, I mean, how many different plants contain DMT?
A huge number.
A huge number.
Very prosaic ones like peas and,
Well, there's the amazing story. Acacia. That's what I was going to say.
The
There's
Australian national tree is actually illegal.
Isn't that? But the Jerusalem, the professors from the University of Jerusalem, I believe.
Benny Shannon.
Yeah, where they were talking about, they believe that that's what the story of the burning bush and Moses is.
So that is mimosa with the DMT and Syrian rue with the monoamine oxidase inhibitor. In other words, it's ayahuasca, but a Middle Eastern alternative of it, doing the same thing molecularly.
And isn't it possible in some way that the idea of the burning bush was them figuring out how to dry or extract DMT and burn it?
Very likely.
Very possibly, right? Because they're talking about the burning bush producing God, and it just so happens that this bush is, the acacia tree is incredibly common and super rich in DMT, and it's all over the area.
And I should probably insert at this point that if you're at all familiar with the Masonic ritual, you'll know that the acacia plant plays a central role.
It is not?
Well, no, they'll cover that was on the show. They're not going to cover this.
The meat, okay.
Because this is not my opinion. This is the real research that I have heard, that I have talked to Army generals, commanding generals, major generals, generals, CIA, everybody. And they're all 100%. And I thought it was a psyop before, and then I've researched it. I've talked to hundreds of people now, not on air, but I'm going to make a film on this, who've taken ayahuasca and DMT. I've not taken it, and for obvious reasons. And it's unbelievable because, I mean, they 100% in San Francisco is the main project site, literally have an alien base, and they are literally communicating, and they've got like astronaut level people taking super hardcore levels of drugs and going into meetings with these things and making intergalactic deals. And again, that's what the government believes and says they're doing.
When you say the government, that's a broad stroke. You're painting you're using a broad brush. Like, what do you mean by the government?
Breakaway rogue intelligence agencies.
Okay, so what you're saying is essentially that they're using psychedelic drugs to communicate with interdimensional beings. All right.
Yeah, spirit guides.
Okay, everyone who's done a high dose of psychedelic drugs has had this experience. So everyone who's listening to you right now who's done DMT or done 5 grams of psilocybin, they know that this is you have some kind of communication with something else. The question is that something else inside your psyche, or is that something else a chemical doorway? Question. Is there a chemical doorway inside the mind that opens up? And the belief is that when you die, and this is what the afterlife is, that when you die, your brain produces these chemicals. These chemicals open up this doorway, and this is the portal to the next dimension. So you're saying that the government is aware of this, and they must be aware of this. They've heard enough people talk about it. They must have done experiments on it.
What do scientists do? They want to know the secrets of the universe.
For sure. And people that have the courage to experiment with these things and try them themselves realize that this is such a profound experience that it's so alien that if an alien landed right now in our parking lot and a little gray man with big black eyes got out, it would be nothing compared to what I've seen on psychedelic trips.
Well, let me just tell you. Me getting into this, Joe, is just because so people need to understand that I've known about this for a long time. And I just don't think people are ready for it. But a lot of folks who have low oxygen and who have
9-volt brains.
Well, who have sleep apnea, big necks, big heads, tongues go big.
Like you and me.
You go down to 62% oxygen. That's another time that the brain releases DMT. So my whole life, since I was about, my first memories were every night was a DMT trip. So I basically, I don't want this to sound arrogant, it's not. I've seen everything.
Well, I believe that when you're dreaming, it's most likely the same chemicals that are being released.
Well, a key point, when you go into the REM sleep, it opens the gate, which scientists have proven your brain is working in the 4th, 5th, 6th dimension. And if you can work into those dimensions, you can see beyond it. So what I'm trying to tell you is this. I know you already know all this, Joe, but for your audience, here's what's happening. I'm not saying you're bad. I never said you were in the CIA. I say the CIA is on record with Timothy Leary and everybody promoting hallucinogens in the 60s. They admitted that it was a plan to try to see what it would do in the public to make them more suggestible. But there's a larger program, and then they kind of backed off because it kind of got out of control and actually created some people that were actually fighting them. So it didn't have the effect they wanted. So then they moved on to the ayahuasca and the DMT that they promoted, which good, strong people that have a compass don't have problems with, but weak-minded, stupid people and others. Here's an example. This guy's smart. Eric Mancow-Muller, syndicated radio host. I've known him like 15 years.
You just lost me.
Well, I'm going to tell you the story.
You said he's smart.
He's a nice guy.
I'm just kidding.
He's a smart guy. Don't be mean to
I've been
him.
on his show before.
Yeah, he
like him.
likes you.
I like him too.
The
I'm just
point is,
fucking around.
Everybody's on this quest. Mm-hmm. And I told you I've talked to like 100 people. I've talked to more. Because a lot of people are going and doing the DMT and ayahuasca trips outside Austin. They're doing them all over the place.
Yes.
And I'm on his show, and he's telling me the same story everybody tells me about being in Peru or being, in Costa Rica. He went and did 2 trips down there. And he said, we're sitting there, and we take the ayahuasca, and then all these basically aliens, come out of the woods, and we're all seeing the same aliens. We're all hearing the same thing. And it's like 43 of us or whatever seeing it. And he goes, but it was the drug's effect on our brains. No. A drug, everyone sees something different. When you open a gate, and now interdimensionally, your brain's already filtering out most stuff because you can't handle it. Your eyes are already seeing it, kind of like a cat when it's like seeing something, or a dog.
The JFK assassination. The theory around John F. Kennedy's assassination in 1963 claims that the official story, where Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman, isn't true. Some believe there were multiple shooters, or that groups like the CIA, the Mafia, or even the U.S. government were involved in the killing. The event has sparked debates and theories over the years, with many people pointing to supposed inconsistencies in the evidence and witness testimonies that suggest a cover-up.
Speaking of Citizen Kane and Orson Welles and conspiracies, last night I rewatched the episode of Geraldo Rivera's Good Night America, when they introduced the Zapruder, because Dick Gregory just died. They introduced this Zapruder film to the American public 13 years or 12 years after Kennedy's assassination. And then I went and read that paper, the articles that was printed a couple of weeks ago that you even tweeted about it, about the CIA questioning the official story of the JFK assassination.
Yeah, that was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Zapruder
well, as
film,
a CIA guy, what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, that Zapruder film, that's the most watched piece of film in history of film.
Is it really?
Which is really interesting. But it was interesting that as typical with a lot of these things, the headline doesn't necessarily actually match once you get into the body of the story. But the idea being that the agency had some concerns over the idea that perhaps Cuba was behind the assassination, or the Russians to some degree, or working more likely in a combination of the two. Look, I think, I think that he could have taken that shot? Yeah. It was not. It was not. I've been up in that book depository from that point from that vantage point. We did a story on the whole issue, the conspiracy theory, and what could have happened. And we tried to find some new witnesses. And could he have made that shot? Yeah, it was a straightforward effort with someone who had some training. He was he wasn't the world's best shot, but he had sufficient training to make that shot. Now that's separate from his motivations and any potential support that he may have gotten during the course of that. And I think that he, in his mind, he genuinely felt that this was going to get him into the revolution, right? That this was he had a very unhappy experience in Russia when he was over there living, came back, saw what was happening in Cuba, desperately wanted to be part of that, took an unexplained trip down to Mexico, which could well have been in an effort to find somebody who could support his desire to take some sort of action, whether he had formed in his mind that's what he was going to do at the time or not. So, is there still a possibility that the Cubans, which the intel service there would have had the file on him? I mean, he was a very, very well-known quantity, obviously, by that time for the Russians. The Russians were solely responsible for training up the Cuban intel service. So there's a massive file on him, and they knew, who they were dealing with. They knew his weaknesses. They knew his motivations. They knew what to do in terms of trying to get leverageable, information on him. So I think that the jury's still out. I'm not a conspiracy guy, but I think there's enough there that says, yes, it's kind of like what we're talking about with climate change. I believe this, but this also could be true. So I think he could have taken that shot for sure, and succeeded. I think it's also possible that he may have had the encouragement of, in particular, the Cuban intel service, through the Russians. Because at that time in particular, they didn't do anything. The Cubans didn't do anything without the Russians' support, blessings, and direction. So that is entirely possible. Do I think that there were a variety of other things at play? Did they help him get the weapon? Did they? I mean, was there actual logistical support in there? I don't.
Who knows?
I don't think so, but maybe. Yeah, it's a fascinating thing, and again, nobody wants to think that something that impactful could have been just one guy who had a dream about being a hero of the revolution. Right? They just it's such an awful thing to think about. You want something bigger. You want something more behind it, and it's. I will say the one thing that I think there was something else to was the MLK. Issue of Martin Luther King assassination.
Well, let's get to that for sure. But here's the thing about the Lee Harvey Oswald assassination. A lot of people think that there was people in the grassy knoll and that they shot at the president and there was more than one shooter. That's possible too. And here's the other problem with people saying that Oswald could have never made that shot. Of course he could have. 100% he could have. Is it likely? Listen, people throw three-point shots that have no fucking business on a basketball court and they hit nothing but net.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's not likely that a guy could get off 3 shots that quick, but it is possible.
Right. There was more time in there than they originally thought. There's some misinformation out there about how condensed that time frame was, and now after they've researched this into a fairly well. That time frame extended a little bit, but he had, more importantly, he worked up there, so he had the opportunity to recce that site, right? So it was like he was sitting in a blind, waiting and figuring out, what am I going to be doing here? And that's a tremendous advantage. And clear daylight, targets moving right in a line with you. There's no wind.
Not only that, it's not that far a shot.
No, it's not.
It's not like everybody thinks it's like a half mile away or something like that. I mean, how far was it? Was it 150 yards or something like that?
Yeah, I'd have to go back, and it's
Let's
been a while
find
now.
out.
But I've stood on that spot where the limo was and
I have
looked
as
up
well.
at the site. And I
Yeah.
stood up there and
Not that
looked
far.
down, and it's not that far. And
It's a total makeable shot on a deer.
Yeah.
Like if you were going to shoot a deer with
Yeah.
a rifle, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's definitely in
Right.
my effective range.
yeah, no, there was no.
How far is it?
There we go.
265 feet, 81 meters. That
Yeah.
ain't shit.
Yeah.
That's a bow shot.
Yeah.
You could shoot an animal with a bow from 80 meters if you're really good and there's no wind.
Yeah.
So that's a really close shot. So the idea that he couldn't make that shot, he's a bad shot, that is so fucking stupid. He absolutely could make that shot.
And then we looked
anybody
at-
could make that shot from 81 meters. That's nothing.
We looked at the grassy knoll issue. We looked at what the train yard engineer reported seeing with a sort of a puff of smoke that he thought he saw over by the fence line, and we looked and we thought, yeah, you could, from that position, they opened that place up and we were able to go back up there and you could see it. We ran a couple of tests and fired off a few shots, and that's always fun. If you want to have a good time, take a rifle to Dealey Plaza and fire off a few shots without the tourists knowing what the hell is happening. And the Dallas police, by the way, were tremendous during the course of that. But
when did you guys do this?
We did this a while back for a show called America Declassified, which isn't running anymore, but it was on Travel Channel.
Jesse Ventura did that. He went up there with a Manlinker Carcano, same rifle. And he was like,
This is an impossible shot. No one could make this shot. It can't be done. Can't be done.
and I love Jesse. I think he's awesome, but
Yeah.
I'm like,
But you
he
can
wants
definitely-
everything to be
yeah.
a conspiracy.
Right.
I'm shooting something that's basically 2 inches high, laying it down on the ground at 100 yards and blowing it to smithereens.
Yeah.
That's how accurate a rifle is at 100 yards. You telling me he couldn't get a headshot at 81 meters? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Again,
of course he could.
no wind.
Of course he could.
Good light.
Did he, though?
But did he? That's right. Yeah.
That's the
and also
question.
the other question is, we have some pretty good indications as to what he was thinking and what his motivations were, and that's important.
Well, he
in
definitely
something
was
like
in
this.
with the Russians. He
Right.
definitely was involved in a lot of weird shit with communism. Who knows what his entire full background was, because there was a lot of covert shit going on.
Right. And did he express a desire to do something like this to the Russians at some point, and they thought, okay, well, here's an interesting opportunity.
Right.
Well, yeah, they would have sparked on that, and they would have thought about it. Would they have actually no play on words intended, but would they have pulled the trigger on an operation trying to push him into doing an act like this?
Maybe.
No, it's indirectly through the Cubans, exactly.
Especially if they thought, like, this crazy fuck might go ahead and do this for us.
Yeah. So,
And this is after the Bay of Pigs. People have to realize there was a lot of people pissed off at Kennedy. We lost a lot of people.
Khrushchev hated
everybody.
Khrushchev hated Kennedy.
Yeah.
And so,
well, that infamous video where he's banging his shoe down on the table, "We will bury you."
Yeah. No, it was. The environment was right for them, and again, the Russians. It shouldn't be any surprise to anybody when you talk about what they did during this election. I mean, they've been doing this forever. You know, you go back to 1940s, and the Russians were, spending a lot of time, effort, and money here in the States trying to keep us out of the war back before Hitler invaded Russia, when they were allied with the Nazis still. So they spent a lot of time. They set up, independent associations. Supposedly, they paid off a lot of unions and union members. Journalists. I mean, they were doing everything they could to create this, or to strengthen the idea of isolationism, just to keep us out. They've been doing this for as long as they've been around.
Right.
So anybody who says, "Well, I can't," it's shocking the Russians would be engaged in this. That's ridiculous.
They've always been engaged,
Yeah.
and we, by the way, have been engaged doing that with them.
What?
Because when you break down all the various people that you document, everyone from Arlen Specter to everyone that's on the Warren Commission's report, it's very clear that those folks had to know that what they were doing was bullshit. From what you said about the FBI chain of custody for the magic bullet to the alteration of the autopsy photos, and the difference between
the autopsy itself.
Yes, the autopsy itself. The difference between the Dallas autopsy and the way they looked at it at Bethesda, Maryland.
There was no autopsy in Dallas. It was just
the
they tried
examination
to save his life.
of the
It was very
body.
quick. The tracheotomy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tracheotomy, and also the description of the exit wound
in
his head.
Well, that comes out later.
Yeah.
Although some people didn't see it, but 40 people. What the ARB did, thank God, was collect all the people who saw the rear exit wound, and it was huge. We showed the film in the film. We showed the 40 people who saw it.
What's really crazy you document in the film was the fact that it wasn't really his brain. I
was going to go to that.
Yeah, please. The brain that they had used as a piece of evidence that this was Kennedy's brain had clearly been in formaldehyde for at least 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad our documentary, and this is James DiEugenio who wrote it. He's really the guy who reads everything, remembers everything through all these years, and there's 1 million documents. We drove a stake through the magic bullet. That's clear. There's no chain of custody. The FBI lied. They also, in the matter of the autopsy, the brain is intact. And it was photographed as such. It was a clean. The whole area was still there. Whereas it's impossible because the brain was seen. You see it spraying out in the car in the Zapruder film. You see it. The nurse Audrey Bell is talking about I can't remember the medical term, whatever it's called. It's spilling out on the floor of Parkland.
Yeah.
And when they weigh the brain, as they do in an autopsy, it comes out normal.
Well, not just normal, but extra large, right?
A little bit. Yeah.
Larger than average. It was
It's impossible.
Epstein didn't kill himself. This theory suggests that Jeffrey Epstein, a wealthy financier arrested for trafficking young people, didn't actually die by suicide in his jail cell in 2019. Many people believe he was murdered to stop him from revealing damaging information about people involved in his crimes. The suspicion grew because Epstein's death was surrounded by unusual circumstances, like his guards falling asleep and security cameras malfunctioning, which made people think there was a deliberate cover-up.
Epstein, people you can't get away with this stuff anymore.
Well, what happened with Epstein, this is what I like about it.
Yeah.
It was so blatant and so outrageous that people go, hey, maybe they did fucking kill Kennedy.
Yeah.
Maybe
absolutely did.
Maybe
and
they
I was just
did.
doing shows in Fort Worth, and I was looking at these audiences, and I was going, they'd kill him again.
Yeah.
They'll kill him again. Give these people a couple of shots of tequila, another shot goes right to Kennedy's head.
Well, if there was another one like Kennedy, let's think if someone took over after Trump and this guy was trying to get rid of the NSA and get rid of the CIA, and then there was some sort of
mafia and industrialists,
and there was and the mafia fucking got him into office in the first place.
100%.
So they were like, "Hey, you fucking piece of shit!
Yeah,
we're the reason why you're here. We rigged Chicago for you." And so then he has this military blunder, the Bay of Pigs, and so then the military's after him. Everybody's hangry.
He says he wants to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and give all peacetime intelligence gathering capability to the military.
If we had someone like that, some guy like that, and by the way, he was fucking everything that moved too.
Yeah, I mean, and he was
different world
doing drugs and everything. Woo! He was enjoying himself.
He was on meth.
That's crazy.
They had a doctor, Dr. Feelgood. That's where the name came from.
And they would go
Motley Crue song,
Dr. Feelgood.
Dr. Feelgood.
And it was Kennedy's doctor.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's when being president was a great job.
Well, they all were on it. That's how they fucking got the party moving.
Yeah, just meth heads.
You're busy, man. You got things to do. It's hard.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, listen, this is the argument for Trump being on amphetamines right now.
Yeah.
How the fuck else are you going to run a country?
Yeah. You have to be a little amped.
A little amped up.
He's definitely amped.
He's got a little piece of something.
But I like seeing him. I like seeing him, when he goes big.
What is this?
Sidebar, South Dakota today started a new campaign, anti-meth campaign, but it is onmeth.com, and meth, we're on it is the slogan. That they spent over $450,000.
I mean, there's not anybody.
What? You spend how much?
$450,000 of taxpayer money to figure this out.
Oh my God!
This is why people hate the government, because nobody was able to stop this and say, "Hey, this is not the best."
This is the dumbest fucking ad campaign I've ever seen in my life. Meth, we're on it. That sounds like a fucking Onion article.
It's like a rap song or something. Like a bad rap song.
This is so.
Doesn't it seem like an Onion article?
I love what it says. It goes, South Dakota has a problem. There isn't a single solution because meth is widespread, but we can approach it from different angles so it doesn't take over counties, towns, neighborhoods. Let's work together. Meth, we're on it. God.
What's up with that fucking brown water? Turn that back up. Put that back on. How about you fix that fucking toilet water you got your kids swimming around in?
Yeah.
Look at that water. It's disgusting.
Yeah, meth is
you got
probably
more than one problem.
Yeah, meth is not even in the top 10 problems in South Dakota. Meth is what you need to get on to fix the other problems in South Dakota. The whole town council's got to have some
you need
meth.
to start cleaning.
But Epstein, they just charged guards. I mean, this is hilarious.
Yes.
This is a very funny comic. Nick Mullen on Twitter was like, "Oh yeah, this is the justice we all wanted. The guards." You know?
No, here's what's
not
good.
the
two prison guards tasked with watching Jeffrey Epstein on night he killed himself. They should fucking charged with falsifying records
And conspiracy.
And conspiracy. Here's why that's good. Somebody paid those guys, and they're gonna sing, or they're gonna die. Something's going to happen. Either they're going to take those guys. And
I think it's a way to satiate the public. I don't think I don't think that Barr, the Attorney General, has any real desire to get to the bottom of what happened. I mean, this is clearly, obviously, sexual blackmail. Epstein was involved with intelligence, whether it's U.S., whether it's Mossad, it's somebody. His island was a honeypot. He had powerful people in compromising positions. He was probably like an access agent where he would give these intel agencies access to insanely powerful people, ex-presidents, people like that. So there, if you don't want to open up that wound because it's never going to stop bleeding, and guys like Barr who are this is a guy that's participated in multiple cover-ups. I don't think he has any really interest in. He's a lifelong government official. You could say deep state, you could say whatever it is, but he's just a career. His job is to protect the interests of these power factions in Washington, these government agencies. There's no way they open this up. And there was no way that they could have had Jeffrey Epstein in open court pointing fingers at maybe prime ministers and presidents. It would tear countries apart. It would be the biggest political scandal in our lifetime.
I just can't believe they just murked him like that, though. They didn't just murk him. They murked him twice. Here's what I want to know. When he tried to commit suicide the first time, were the cameras broken then, too?
Great question. I don't know.
How come we never heard that?
Well, we didn't see any footage of him. I've never seen any footage of him in his cell. I mean, they haven't released any footage of the cameras ever working, right? I mean, from what I can understand.
Did they even comment on it? Remember the first time that he attempted to commit suicide?
I think they got it. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good point. I mean, I think they found him. They transferred him. I don't know if they have photographic evidence of him doing that.
Google what happened the first time Epstein tried to kill himself, because that's an interesting thing.
And where is it's a very interesting.
So do they know for sure? Did they watch the footage and see him tying a rope around his neck?
And then they went in and go, next time you got to do it like this. You tie the knot stronger. You take off from the chair.
My favorite thing was his cellmate. The cellmate that they gave him.
Oh yeah, which is like a cop who
gorilla cop
from Westchester.
Huge skinhead looking dude, Italian guy,
coked out,
giant muscles, who killed a bunch of fucking people and sold drugs.
Just him and Epstein, and they got along.
He was like the Hollywood stereotype of the last guy you would want in your fucking cell.
Want to be in a cell with.
Big Guido, ex-corrupt cop with giant muscles.
Yeah.
That
This monster.
And connected to the law. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like, if that's the guy, I mean, that would be the guy that, maybe he's the guy who killed him.
Who knows?
I mean, he's a giant fucking guy.
I mean, guys like that, I'm sure would take a bribe pretty easily, and and those guys don't open their mouths,
just
you know?
for fucking cigarettes.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, he can't open his mouth. He's in jail.
Right.
They got him locked up, and they go, look.
And who knows? And listen, if
Tommy, come on.
Right, Tommy, do this.
Tommy,
And
you were here forever. You like killing people.
I think they got to watch I don't know if they can do this, but they got to watch the bank accounts. Now, obviously, the people that are paying off people are pretty smart.
Yeah.
There's ways to hide money, but somebody got paid off a substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
Somewhere,
They might not have.
You don't think so?
This is a weird one. Like this one involves so many people. Money might not have been passed around.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like somebody just might have called in favors for this.
Yeah. Where
and
is
said, hey, just hide.
Yeah, where is Ghislaine Maxwell?
Oh, that bitch is in Brazil.
Yeah. Somebody said she was in L.A.
Yeah, she was in L.A. at an In-N-Out Burger with a fucking book.
And they staged a photo.
CIA agents. Yeah.
And they released a staged photo. And I don't know what the fuck. She was thinking like, oh, America will forgive me if they see I'm eating fast food. I don't even understand.
No. She was trying to release a message.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was reading a book about CIA agents that had been murdered.
Yeah, but what's the point of that message?
She was trying to say he's a fucking intelligence agent.
Right, yeah.
You know, that was something that was actually said by, was it one of the attorney generals when they were prosecuting his initial...
Alexander Acosta said Epstein would belong to intelligence.
Yes.
Well, if you just look at, this has happened...
There it is.
Yeah, there's the photo.
So, does it show the book?
There's another photo. I think you can see the side of the book.
Okay.
But they also added in that movie poster.
That's
which
right.
is
Somebody
very
swapped
confusing.
out the movie poster. They photoshopped. They took advantage of this opportunity to promote a fucking film.
Right.
Wasn't it the Seth Rogen movie?
Yeah,
This is an interesting
Hilarious.
product placement in the background of a human trafficker having a sandwich.
At least she's got good taste in
Listen,
in food.
she's getting
interesting,
good
she's got
brand
an-
deals.
She's got an old iPhone, so she's showing she's struggling a little bit financially.
It's very interesting. She's not on the new iPhone.
That's a burner. She's got a burner.
Well,
she probably had 5 different phones. She probably drives them into there it is.
You know, I think it's hard for people to understand that like elements of the CIA or the Mossad would condone the abuse of children to get leverage and information on people, but that's kind of what's happened before.
Yeah, I think they just figured, look, these 15, 16-year-olds, they're going to keep their mouth shut. I mean, we're talking about when this happened. This is all a long time ago, right?
It wasn't that long ago.
Like, how long ago did it start?
I mean, it's
90s,
it's been
80s?
going on for probably very decades, but
Right, but my point was when it initially got started, they probably didn't have the internet, right?
100%.
When did he start bringing people out to the island?
He got the island, I think, late 90s or early 2000.
Yeah, so
2001
nobody
period.
really understood the concept of social media or where it was
No,
all
yeah.
going to go. But what's really crazy is like no one's ever accounted for how that fucking guy got all that money.
Well, Les Wexner, who was the head of Victoria's Secret, was like his mentor, and they were buddies. And Wexner gave him. And you know what's so funny about the mainstream press? You know, the Wall Street Journal ran some article. They're like, how could a guy like Les Wexner, who sold women's jeans forever, you know, get totally bamboozled by Jeffrey Epstein?
MKUltra mind control experiments. MKUltra was a secret CIA program in the 1950s and 60s where the government experimented with mind control, using drugs like LSD to manipulate people's behavior. The CIA wanted to use these drugs to brainwash enemies and control them for spying purposes, sometimes on unwittingly subjects like military personnel and civilians. The program was shut down, but some people believe that similar mind control experiments still happen today, using more advanced technology.
So you brought up MKUltra.
Yes.
MKUltra was a government program run by the Central Intelligence Agency, originally started as something called Bluebird in 1948-49, morphed into Artichoke, and then in 1952 became MKUltra. It was a mind control program, a brainwashing program. The CIA was trying to learn how to control people's behavior without their knowledge. Now, this all came out in Senate and congressional hearings in the 70s. It was exposed, but nobody knew about it until 1974 when Seymour Hersh, the New York Times reporter, reported it on the front page of the paper. So their main objective was to create what they called hypno-programmed assassins, people who would kill on command, popularly known as Manchurian Candidates, after a book that was written in 1962 and later became a movie and then a movie again. The people would be, through drugs and hypnotism, the objective was to get people to go and commit an act of murder against their moral code and have no memory of their programming and be amnesic even of the act after the fact often. That was just that was their main goal, but they were also trying to create couriers, people, military people that they could implant messages, send them, across dangerous areas where there were, at that time it was the Vietnam War, and deliver messages and then have them wiped from their memory in case they were captured. They had all kinds of objectives. So Roger Smith was supervising Manson when he became he was able to do exactly what the MKUltra program had been trying to create and do for, at that point, about 15, 17 years. When it was all exposed in the 70s, and there were these hearings, first the Rockefeller Commission hearings and the church hearings, and then finally Senators Ted Kennedy and Daniel Inouye held hearings. The CIA admitted that they had done this, but no one would say exactly what they did. All the records had been destroyed when the two people who ran it, Richard Helms, who had become the director of the CIA in the 60s, and Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, who was kind of the mad scientist who had supervised they had safe houses in San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, where they would experiment on people that were lured into these apartments and houses that were either look like brothels or hippie communes or whatever. And the people who were working at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic that was run by another Smith, which makes it a little confusing, but Dr. David Smith, who founded it, he had given an office to a scientist named Jolly West, Louis J. West, who was, when the hearings occurred in the 70s, identified as a top MKUltra researcher. He was an academic, come out of the military, had been at the University of Oklahoma, and then UCLA, running the psychiatric divisions. He denied ever being involved in MKUltra. And this was one of the moments, I think it was 2001, when, things really kind of shook the course of my reporting. Was I learned that West had been at the same place that Manson was in the Haight in the summer, that Manson became exactly what the CIA was trying to create. And I knew, actually, I'd interviewed West about 7 years before for a story I did about celebrity stalkers and people who were obsessed with stars and then only to kill them or try to kill them. And he was an expert in violence, hypnotism, brainwashing, and he was the chair of the psychiatry department at UCLA at that point. He was dead when his name came up in the Manson story, and there wasn't a lot of, I guess there was a lot of Google then, or a little bit, but when I did a little research, I found out that there had been these allegations that he'd been involved in MKUltra. He always denied it. He was never prosecuted, never even investigated. He went to his grave threatening to sue anybody that said he would have anything to do with this kind of a program. Again, through another long story, but I got access to his files, which had been left at UCLA, and they had never been processed when I called. And when I made the request, it took them 2 or 3 months to process the papers. I went through them through the whole summer looking for a needle in a haystack, and it was intuition, gut. I just thought there might be something there, and sure enough, I eventually found it. It was correspondence between Jolly West and Sidney Gottlieb, the doctor that ran MKUltra, beginning in 1953, about conducting experiments on people without their knowledge to get them to have amnesia of the acts after they were programmed, and everything that he had been accused of and denied, he did. Not only did he do it, he created the blueprint for the whole program with Gottlieb. The fact that all these kind of interesting research programs merged at the Haight, at the clinic, and then Manson came out of it with the power to do exactly what the MKUltra had been trying to create for up to that point, I thought was worth investigating further. And that's why I kept going and going and going.
They did a lot of crazy shit back then. Are you aware of Operation Midnight Climax?
Those were the safe houses in San Francisco.
Well, that was the brothel version of it. Yeah, where they lured these Johns into these brothels and then dosed them up with LSD and studied them. Yeah,
George Hunter White was the head CIA guy, and he would sit behind a two-way or one-way mirror and watch them. The Johns would be dosed with LSD. They tried aerosols or just drinks, different things, and then they would study their behaviors.
Aerosols?
Yeah, aerosol sprays.
Really?
Yeah.
But that would get the prostitutes too then, no?
No, the prostitutes would get them in there, and then they go to the bathroom or something, or to be in the bathroom. Yeah.
Oh,
and again, the problem is the records are so scant because Helms ordered Gottlieb to destroy all the records in 1973 when the two men left the agency. And the only reason anybody ever discovered that it existed was a whistleblower, somebody who used to work for the State Department who remembered that there were records in a warehouse, and they were just financial records from the beginning of the program in 52 until the end, and the possible end in 73. And it was just financial records of where research took place, how much was spent, what kind of equipment was bought, but nothing about the content. The guy that found that ended up testifying to Congress and working with Seymour Hersh to expose it was named John Marks. He wrote the first book about MKUltra that came out in the mid to late 70s called The Search for the Manchurian Candidate. And after he wrote his book, he never, he spoke, did a little bit of a tour, and then retreated into obscurity and never would do an interview again until I approached him in the early 2000s. And when I told him what I had found in West's files, these documents, he agreed to meet with me at his townhouse in Washington, D.C. And he told me, he said, the reason I stopped talking or writing about this was people were camping out on my front lawn, telling me that they'd been victims of MKUltra. He goes, I couldn't go anywhere. My whole life became crazy because everybody thought that they were subject to this because nobody knew. They did these drug tests on prisoners, hospital patients, Johns, hippies, people that had no idea that this was going on for 25 years.
AI will take over the world. This theory suggests that artificial intelligence will one day surpass human intelligence. Some fear that AI could become so advanced that it may take control of systems we rely on, like the economy, military, and communications, leading to a future where machines rule over humans. Experts have warned that without proper regulation, AI could pose a serious risk to humanity's future.
Towards this very specific goal, and someone does make a leap. What is the protocol? Is there an established protocol
This
for?
is a great question.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember we were talking to the labs around is like, so there's a group called ARC Evals. They just renamed themselves actually, but and they do the testing to see does the new AI that they're being worked on, so GPT-4, they test it before it comes out, and they're like, does it have dangerous capabilities? Can it deceive a human? Does it know how to make a chemical weapon? Does it know how to make a biological weapon? Does it know how to persuade people? Can it exfiltrate its own code? Can it make money on its own? Could it copy its code to another server and pay Amazon crypto money and keep self-replicating? Can it become an AGI virus that starts spreading over the internet? So there's a bunch of things that people who work on AI risk issues are concerned about, and ARC Evals was paid by OpenAI to test the model. The famous example is that GPT-4 actually could deceive humans. The famous example was it asked a TaskRabbit to do something, specifically to fill in the CAPTCHA. So CAPTCHA is that thing where it's like, are you a real human? Drag this block over here to here, or which of these photos is a truck or not a truck? Those CAPTCHAs, right? And you want to finish this example? I'm not doing a great job of
Well, and so the AI asked the TaskRabbit to solve the CAPTCHA, and the TaskRabbit is like, oh, that's sort of suspicious. Are you a robot? And you can see what the AI is thinking to itself. And the AI says, I shouldn't reveal that I'm a robot. Therefore, I should come up with an excuse. And so it says back to the TaskRabbit, oh, I'm vision impaired. So
could you fill out CAPTCHA for me? The AI came up with that on its own. And the way they know this is that they what he's saying about like what was it thinking? What ARC Evals did is they sort of piped the output of the AI model to say whatever your next line of thought is, like dump it to this text file so we just know what you're thinking. And it says to itself, I shouldn't let it know that I'm an AI or I'm a robot So let me make up this excuse, and then it comes up with that excuse.
My wife told me that Siri, like when you have use Apple CarPlay, that someone sent her an image and Siri described the image. Is that a new thing?
That would be a new thing.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that? Is that real?
There's definitely.
I was going to look into it, but I was in the car. I was like, what?
That's the new generative AI capability.
They added something that definitely describes images that's on your phone for sure within the last year. I haven't tested Siri describing it, but I'm sure it would.
Imagine if Siri described my friend Stavos' calendar. Stavos, who's a hilarious comedian who has a new Netflix special called Fat Rascal. But imagine describing that.
I think that's where all of the complexity comes in for people. It's not this like clean story of we're going to do this and it's all going to be great. It's we're going to do this. It's going to be net great, but it's going to be like a technological revolution. It's going to be a societal revolution. And those always come with change. And even if it's like net wonderful, there's things we're going to lose along the way. Some kinds of jobs, some kind of parts of our way of life, some parts of the way we live are going to change or go away. And no matter how tremendous the upside is there, and I believe it will be tremendously good, there's a lot of stuff we got to navigate through to make sure. That's a complicated thing for anyone to wrap their heads around, and there's deep and super understandable emotions around that.
That's a very honest answer. That it's not all going to be good, but it seems inevitable at this point.
It's definitely inevitable. My view of the world, when you're like a kid in school, you learn about this technological revolution and then that one and then that one. And my view of the world now, sort of looking backwards and forwards, is that this is like one long technological revolution. And we had, first we had to figure out agriculture so that we had the resources and time to figure out how to build machines. Then we got this industrial revolution, and that made us learn about a lot of stuff, and a lot of other scientific discovery too. Let us do the computer revolution, and that's now letting us, as we scale up to these massive systems, do the AI revolution. But it really is just one long story of humans discovering science and technology and co-evolving with it. And I think it's the most exciting story of all time. I think it's how we get to this world of abundance. And although we do have these things to navigate, and there will be these downsides, if you think about what it means for the world and for people's quality of lives, if we can get to a world where the cost of intelligence and the abundance that comes with that, the cost dramatically falls, the abundance goes way up. I think we'll do the same thing with energy. And I think those are the two sort of key inputs to everything else we want. So if we can have abundant and cheap energy and intelligence, that will transform people's lives largely for the better. And I think it's going to, in the same way that if we could go back now 500 years and look at someone's life, we'd say, well, there's some great things, but they didn't have this, they didn't have that. Can you believe they didn't have modern medicine? That's what people are going to look back at us like, but in 50 years.
When you think about the people that currently rely on jobs that AI will replace, when you think about whether it's truck drivers or automation workers, people that work in factory assembly lines.
People then say, like, okay, so AI does like dangerous things and it might be able to help you make a biological weapon, but like who's actually going to do that? Like who would actually release something that would like kill all humans? And that's why we're sort of like talking about this doomsday cult, because most people I think don't know about it, but you've probably heard of the 1995 Tokyo subway attacks.
Yes.
Sarin gas. This was the doomsday cult behind it.
Oh.
And what most people don't know is that, like, one, their goal was to kill every human. Two, they weren't small. They had tens of thousands of people, many of whom were like experts and scientists, programmers, engineers. They had like not a small amount of budget, but a big amount. They actually somehow had accumulated hundreds of millions of dollars. And the most important thing to know is that they had 2 microbiologists on staff that were working full time to develop biological weapons. The intent was to kill as many people as possible. And they didn't have access to AI, and they didn't have access to DNA printers. But now DNA printers are like much more available. And if we have something, you don't even really need AGI. You just need like any of these sort of like GPT-4, GPT-5 level tech that can now collapse the distance between we want to create a super virus like smallpox, but like 10 times more viral and like 100 times more deadly, to here are the step-by-step instructions for how to do that. You try something, it doesn't work, and you have a tutor that guides you through to the very end.
What is a DNA printer?
It's the ability to take like a set of DNA code, just like GTC, whatever, and then turn that into an actual physical strand of DNA. And these things now run on, like they're benchtop. They run on your, you can get them, these things.
Whoa.
Yeah, this is really dangerous. We don't want, this is not something you want to be empowering people to do en masse. And I think, the word democratize is used with technology a lot. We're in Silicon Valley. A lot of people talk about we need to democratize technology, but we also need to be extremely conscious when that technology is dual use or omni-use.
UFOs and government cover-ups. The theory behind UFOs and government cover-ups suggests that the U.S. government has hidden evidence of extraterrestrial life and UFOs for decades. Many believe that the military has recovered alien spacecraft and bodies, but have kept them secret from the public. People point to incidents like the 1947 Roswell crash, where a military base initially reported a flying disc crash, only later to say it was a weather balloon, as proof that the government is hiding the truth about aliens.
Way of moving through space and time that the U.S. government has developed, in some black ops program, that seems very likely impossible. That seems more likely than aliens visiting us. But there's more than one incident. And there's a lot of these things. And the possibility of alien life in the universe, although we've never experienced it, seems rational. It seems very rational. And if you were going to study an emerging civilization that is both primitive and warlike and yet insanely technologically advanced, to the point where they have nuclear weapons, they can transmit video through the sky, they have propaganda, they have tracking of their citizens, like that's us. That's us right now. And while we are these territorial, primal beings with fucking nuclear weapons, this would be a good time to start exposing yourself.
Yes.
And to stop this nonsense.
Insanity.
Yeah. And look, the reason why we named the rooms at our club Fat Man and Little Boy is because in UFO lore, that's when they started showing up. After the detonation of the atomic bombs in Japan, that's when the UFO sightings ramped up.
And they ramped up mostly in the U.S., right?
Yes.
So that's interesting because the U.S. was the nuclear power. So.
And we were the one who was doing a lot of fucking testing.
Yeah.
And also we have all these military bases. Who the fuck has more military bases than us?
No one.
Who has more nuclear weapons pointed at other people than us? We have them all over the place. And there's all these multiple sightings and eyewitness accounts of like very credible people who say these things have hovered over military bases.
It'd be pretty cool if these aliens were benevolent overlords and they were like, hey, my children.
Yeah. Or maybe even so advanced intellectually that the concept of an overlord is preposterous and they're just biological management. There's just the gardeners tending to make sure the weeds don't get out of hand and just like let this process continue to play itself out, because this process of technological innovation it's the everything that humans do.
Yeah.
It's what we do at the pinnacle of our creation is we make better technology.
Well, I always wonder about fractals and whether or not like this idea of this being a simulation, this being, like we are kind of replicating, we are creating machines and doing our best to create them in our own image, right?
Yes.
And that's interesting. That's because the mythologies that we subscribe to are the idea that this God that we pray to made us in his image. Right. And we're doing the same thing now with robots and computers. And that's an interesting thing that we seem to have this sort of paradigm, this idea that that's the scaffolding for the way we think, right? And to what end? And why are we doing that?
Maybe it's the creation
and has it
of
already
a new
happened?
life form.
But has it already happened? Are we the result of that impulse that happened a long time ago?
I think we are the shit-throwing chimps that are going to become the nuclear physicists.
That's what
we are the shit-throwing chimps from 2001 that
Yeah.
become Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think this thing that we become is integrated with technology. It's probably some sort of a hybrid. It's some sort of a cyborg.
That's wild.
Because I think we're already like on the verge of merging. You know, all this talk of like Neuralink and all these various things. We watched this video the other day of this guy who is Googling questions and getting answers in his head with his headpiece on. Have you seen that thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Incredible. Right? So how long before that is like, that's Pong.
I know. But that's...
And then you have the Unreal 4 engine in 2023 that looks like a movie.
No.
Like, how long before that technology gets to the point where it's just supremely advanced and we literally are like gods?
But my question really is also the idea that that's engineering, right? That's a tool.
It's innovation.
But there's engineering. So there are two aspects to it. One is getting information faster and stuff, which doesn't get you closer to the truth, but it gets you information faster. There are endless facts. But more importantly, I always wonder, like, why we are given this. I really believe that human potential is pretty much infinite. Whatever you can imagine and beyond, we can do. And we are doing. We seem to be doing this. Like, think about how crazy that is. I can wear a headset and I can do things with my mind and look up the answer.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's magic. It's crazier than magic. But there's a way to measure that and quantify that and replicate that. So it's not magic. I can do it and I can tell you exactly how I get there, which is even crazier. So what is that leading us to? It is nudging us closer. It's like I think it's very significant that we're getting a better understanding of what it's like to be someone else. Yeah. We are. It's really hard to say that a Yanomamo Indian or whoever it might be thinks about things differently than I do when I know so much about how all these human beings, like someone in Iran, someone in Jordan, laughs and cries and bleeds at the same thing I do. It's being prejudiced based on what that person looks like over there is becoming harder and harder to justify. Where it was before we knew about that, we were like, well, those people over there are quote unquote savages, or they're this, that, and the other thing. And I do think that we are getting a better understanding of what it's like to be each other and being nudged in the same direction. I'm not saying we don't become tribal.
I think that's true too.
But why? And it's interesting to think about where that's leading us to what understanding. And then when we have that understanding, what are we going to do about that?
Right. And are we going to pull it together? And are the aliens here to make sure that we don't fuck it up?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the beautiful idea. The terrible idea is that it's all us. And then it's all a big ruse, and it's all just drones that we're doing because we don't want China and Russia to know about it. But we have insane propulsion systems that operate on gravity. And
yeah. I think it is us.
But
I hate to tell you.
It seems like both. It seems like us, and it also seems like there's some shit that we just don't understand. And I don't know if those people are telling the truth. Because if the people that are telling the truth that there's biological entities, and this is what Jackie Gleason said that Nixon told him, and Nixon took him on they were drinking. You know that famous story?
No.
Who knows if it's true? It's a legend. But the legend is that Jackie Gleason and Nixon were drinking, and that Nixon said, "You want to see some fucking aliens?" And they get on Air Force One, and they fly to some Air Force base, and they go to a place where they have a crashed UFO, and they have biological beings that are in freezers. And Jackie Gleason sees this. And Jackie Gleason, after that, has a house built in upstate New York that looks like a UFO. He became obsessed with UFOs after it. There was a house, it was actually for sale at one point in time. Yeah, so he has this house that he had shaped like a UFO. And this is like, who knows if this is a true story? Yeah. Right? Because it's like, it was kind of sort of disputed. His ex-wife told the story or something like that. I forget.
I think that kind of thing is actually impossible to keep secret.
No, I don't think so.
Really?
No, I don't think so.
You think generational, generations of government bureaucrats can keep something a secret?
Sure,
I don't
they
think
tell the people at the very highest level know about it. It's very few people. It's all very compartmentalized.
They're always...
They monitor everyone's phone calls, everyone's emails, everything everyone does.
Impossible.
At a top secret clearance level?
No way. Impossible.
I don't think you're right.
Totally impossible.
You're definitely not right.
I think it's impossible.
Listen, man, they can keep secrets.
When?
People
Which
at high
ones?
levels of military can keep secrets.
Yeah, but they're always rotating out. They're retiring. They're dying.
Yeah, they probably wind up fucking Hillary Clinton and a lot of those dudes.
Hey, listen, dude. This is not this is not Conspiracy Social Club. This is the Joe Rogan experience.
I am not willing to relinquish the idea that they could keep that secret.
Well, that's because it's fun to believe in.
Yeah, but it's not just fun to believe in. It is possible. It's a physically possible thing to do. especially if you have the right people and they're indoctrinated in the right way with top secret clearance. And by the way, it's not like these people don't tell their friends. And it's not like there's a bunch of stories floating around, because there are. There's a shitload of stories
That's what I'm
floating
saying.
around.
But why would you, like, I would never keep that a secret. I'd be like, hey, you got fucking aliens.
Here's the thing. When you have senators and congressmen who find out about this, and they find out that military contractors are the ones who have access to this stuff, because the back engineering program has to involve someone who has the capability of recreating this. So who would that be? That would be the people that make jets. If you got someone who's making you a fucking a stealth bomber and you have a crashed UFO, those are the people that you want discussing like what kind of things you've recovered from a fucking alien crash, and can this be replicated?
No, here's the problem with your whole
don't
theory.
you know me, motherfucker, because you don't know. You might be wrong.
This is your wrong. No.
No. Don't say you're wrong because you don't know that I'm wrong.
This is the problem with your theory. Ready?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, and I love that you want to believe in this, and so do I, but here's the problem.
Okay.
There's no law. There's no written law that says I'm not allowed to talk about aliens. And I mean at the top levels of clearance, like the most secret level. There is no world where if I'm a government official and I take a bunch of pictures and I come before Congress and I go, here's my evidence, I'm blowing the whistle, there are real aliens.
You don't think they would go after you for
I'd never go to jail.
Violating your top secret clearance?
No, because it's not violating my top secret clearance.
But it would be.
Nope. Because I'd
right.
never go to jail for that. Because I'd be like, you're going to put me in jail for exposing what everybody wants to know? The whole world would be like, holy shit, you guys kept this a secret?
But that's assuming that you have access to that material to extract
there are enough people who
from
would.
wherever maybe not. Maybe those are the kind of people that wouldn't do that, Brian.
Listen,
you
my
fucking
friend.
Communist. I don't like the way you think.
I'm shredding your UFO theories.
No, you're not.
Listen,
you think you are, but you're just using these establishment
You're allowed to talk
points.
about UFOs and you never get in trouble.
You sound like your dad.
Come on, man. First,
you're
tell me,
a CIA
Schultz will beat me up.
You're a CIA
I'll call my dad
stooge,
right now.
And you're in here spreading propaganda to the faithful listeners.
Listen to
of
me.
This
Listen to me. There are no aliens, and if there are, we'd know about it because it's
if
not
there is, you're
going
to come back on dressed like a clown. Agreed?
Agreed.
That's my bets I'm making with everybody now.
I'll dress up like
you
a
gotta dress like a clown.
I'll do it.
The Bohemian Grove Secret Society. The Bohemian Grove theory claims that the world's most powerful men, including politicians and business leaders, secretly gather at a private exclusive club in California called Bohemian Grove. People believe they perform strange rituals, like worshiping a giant owl statue and holding bizarre ceremonies, with the aim of maintaining control over global politics and the economy. This theory gained attention after an activist secretly filmed some of the rituals in the 1980s, which led to speculation about what really happens behind closed doors.
But he's also actually exposed some real shit, and he owns up to the mistakes he's made. They're not good. He doesn't think they're good. There's a thing about finding conspiracies everywhere that's not good for your brain. I really believe this. I think that if you go looking for those things and that's all you look for, and you look for them all the time, you can get real paranoid and real crazy. And then there's also a bunch of people that are trying to stop you from doing that because you do expose some crazy shit.
Yeah.
You know, he was talking about Epstein a long time ago.
I know.
A long time ago. He was saying there is a fucking island, and they take all these rich politicians and some celebrities, and they bang these kids. And I was like, come on. He was telling me this a long time ago. So he's also the one who told me about Bohemian Grove. Well, I actually watched it. I think this tape was actually made before I met him. So he went and snuck in to this place where like former presidents go. There's a photograph of it's Ronald Reagan with Herbert Walker Bush and a couple other people all standing around. And it's like these are the people that used to hang out at this place, and they would put on robes and they would worship an owl god, and they would burn an effigy. And they're playing, and Alex snuck in and made video footage of this shit. And no one's denying that it's real. This really did happen. So they're in with these bankers and former presidents, and they're dressed like druids.
Yes.
And some guy brings over something that it's an effigy that's supposed to be a body, a wrapped up effigy. It's also a bunch of sticks in a blanket, but it's like shaped like a body.
Yeah.
And then they drop it on the fire, and they're all worshiping an owl god.
Why is that bad?
Imagine if you saw those, if that's what your business is, just finding those things. How crazy do you think you get?
First of all, wait.
Then you add in vodka and head wounds.
Wait, hold on, wait. Go to the vodka and head wounds part. What
That's
do you
Alex
mean?
Jones.
Okay, I got you.
A lot of vodka, and he had a bad head injury when he was
God
younger.
damn it, man. When I was in liberal arts school, man, there was this great teacher who changed my life, Sam Scoville. And one of the things he taught was so beautiful. He still teaches there. One of the things he taught was Figure out a way to take in all information and then filter out the shit that's not real and keep the real stuff. And like, Alex Jones is like,
some of the stuff is real.
Take what's real and throw out the rest.
There's a good chunk of it that's real. Like I remember he was telling me that there's government's using chemicals that turn frogs gay. I was like, what? What are you talking about? He goes, yes. He goes, pesticides are turning frogs gay. And I'm like, that can't be real. No, there really is.
Is that true?
Yes, there's pesticides that change frogs' genders.
What?
Yes. Yes.
But
some pesticide fucks with frogs' genders.
That sucks.
Maybe it doesn't.
I mean, depends on the frog.
Maybe it's awesome for the frog.
Depends
Maybe
on the
frogs
frog.
don't give a fuck because they've never been taught homophobia.
Why would they care?
They don't care who they fuck. But there's a real thing that... See if you can find that. It's a pesticide that has some sort of an effect, an unintended effect on frogs' genders. Dude, that's another thing that people don't talk about. Pesticides that have been used in like golf courses and like there's people who live around those. That's a chemical dump.
Yeah, golf courses are fucked up.
Pesticide atrazine can turn male frogs into females.
Cool.
So there's a fucking pesticide
Berkeley
that
News.
changes the gender, or should I say the sex? Is it the same thing? I have to sex and gender.
Hey, I'm not getting sucked into that fucking black hole, Rogan. You can keep that shit to yourself. But hey, I'll get sucked into another black hole.
Isn't that crazy though?
Well, yeah.
Okay, what
Before
else?
we get into that stuff, I want to say this real quick.
Okay.
Is that camera on me? Friends at the Bohemian Grove. Future friends, I should say. I just want you to know, I don't know much about you. I know Alex Jones, probably on vodka drinks.
I don't think he was then. I think he was sober. He started drinking after all this.
Please don't fuck this up for me.
Sorry.
So you had an infiltrator. Look, I went to a summer camp. We had bonfires. We wore robes. I mean, not like maybe what you do. I just want to say, hey, come on. Invite me, please. I won't tell anybody anything. I've heard you guys are pretty awesome. Actually, what I've heard is the idea was to get a bunch of hardcore neocons together and then mix some artists in the hopes that having brushing shoulders with artists would in some way, shape, or form loosen some people up a little bit. And I've also heard you have a tram that connects campsites there to other campsites, meaning you just get in the tram and suddenly you're hanging out with Dick Cheney. Listen, I won't tell anybody. I got a podcast. I won't even tell Joe. Let me in. I'll worship Moloch. I won't worship Moloch if it means hurting people. But I don't understand why people are upset about fucking. By the way, that fucking
Jesus
video.
Christ.
What's wrong with worshiping?
Nothing.
This is
You're
the
getting
thing.
so excited.
This is the thing that I get confused about here.
Okay. Did you? You went to the Grove?
Yeah.
Oh shit! Why'd you get kicked out?
Fucking weird. Fucking weird. I punched a kid in the head.
You punched a kid in the head in
And-
Bohemian Grove?
Yeah. It turns out this fucking kid was an infiltrator. So then after that, I was kind of this hero. Like a year or two later, he'd come back. I was like, I'm not coming to your little fucking weird party out in the fucking woods. I was like, I went once. It ain't that cool.
So the infiltrator, what happened with you and the infiltrator?
We're sitting on this fire. You have these little, they're kind of like tree houses or campsites, but they're really nice. Everyone has a private chef. Got
Really?
Yeah, you do share a room. Me and Jimmy John shared a room. That was fun. And I came over and kids talking around this fire, and he just started popping that shit, and I just fucking went at him.
Oh.
Gave him a couple, helped him up. It's like, hey, we good? Well, I think, we weren't on great terms, but I think we had an understanding. It was just, one of those things. And then I couldn't go to the concert that night. I think Zach Brown or somebody was playing, like, you can't come.
My
And I had to
God.
sit home like I was in fucking timeout or something. I'm like, fuck this place.
Meanwhile, you're Kid Rock and you're getting left alone by these people with some fucking crazy person, and you defend yourself.
Fucking weird.
There's going to be a certain percentage of people that are just out of their fucking minds, and if you haven't vetted them, that's on you. Don't kick them out.
For all I remember, it could have been drunk shit or whatever. It wasn't the end of the world. It was a little tussle and a little hit the ground, maybe a punch here and there. It was like, then it was done. It wasn't like,
But it was a fight.
I guess
You're just a nice guy. You didn't beat him to death.
It was a tussle.
You're a nice guy. But it's, how many people infiltrate that place? Because a bunch of people have filmed videos there now.
I have no idea.
Alex Jones was the first. Him and John Ronson. This is back before Alex Jones was persona non grata, and people would do legitimate journalists like John Ronson would do these things with him.
Not familiar.
You never seen that video of them in Bohemian
I've never
Grove?
heard of John Ronson.
John Ronson's a brilliant guy. He's what is his he's an author. He wrote that book, So You're Getting Publicly Shamed, about like social media shaming. You know, like he's an interesting guy. He's a very funny guy. But he went with Alex to Bohemian Grove, and they filmed these rituals. These people dressed like druids, and they're burning this effigy in front of a giant owl statue.
I was at the owl statue. This is fucking hilarious. So I'm there on day one, right? And we're drinking beers. Like, it's pretty laid back. There's some really cool talks. I remember this dude talking about shooting asteroids out that might hit the Earth in so many years, shit like that. I'm like, fuck, this is cool.
Oh,
But the
wow.
first day, it was the first evening, and you gather around whatever, the owl by this lake, if I remember correctly, which could be a little hazy. It was a long time ago. And like I've heard about this place. I'm like, this is some real secret ass shit, man. I can't believe I'm fucking here, right? And it's just a trove of celebrities, fucking everywhere you turn. It's just fucking A. So you go there, and I'm like thinking we're gonna hear some shit, right? They're about to introduce the first speaker, and I'm like, fuck, this is gonna be some shit. And they're like, and no offense against this guy, we consider him friendly. We have very good mutual friends, but they're like, ladies and gentlemen, Tony Danza. And I'm like, what? I'm like, come on, man. Who's the fucking boss? Tell them bitches. Wish he would have just gone up there and been like, who's the boss, bitch?
That's hilarious.
I was like, no fucking way, man. I was like, we came all the way to this secret ass shit. And I love Tony. Fucking love him. But I'm like, come on, man. I was like, they brought Reagan back from the dead, and he's going to speak or hologram or some shit. Like,
You were hoping for some devil shit.
just some crazy shit, one way or the other. He was a very good speaker, I got to say, but
maybe they toned it down. Maybe they toned
This
it
has to
down
be 20
after
years
they've been
ago.
infiltrated. Oh, really?
I'm terrible with dates, but it's a long time ago.
Okay, because when Alex snuck in was it like the 90s, Jamie? What was it? Like when Alex Jones and John Ronson snuck into Bohemian Grove. That's when they first got that video. I want to say it was in the 90s. I want to say it was like 99 or something like that.
I did have some fun there, I got to say. It was fucking weird. I met like Paul Pelosi and his son.
Oh, boy.
And like Chris Matthews. Like, you know,
Oh,
but I was
okay.
hanging out with them. We were having cool conversations. Kind of weird. And then they asked me, like, I had to come play my guitar.
Oh, no.
And like sing at one of these camp things. And I was like, I feel so used. I feel so dirty. Like, I don't do this shit, man. What the fuck?
Which of these theories do you find the most interesting or the most believable? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to check out my other videos and subscribe for more content like this.